Word is that Chris Rock and Will Smith are going to have a sit down on national TV. And you remember the Academy Awards, Will Smith smacked Chris Rock on stage. So my question to you, Delvis, would you have a sit down with someone that smacked you?
Bro, I'm gonna be frank with you. It'll be some sad song singing and some flower bringing. Cause they slap me, they gonna die. Period. They gonna die. Somebody's gonna die. Point blank. There's no other way to put it. They going to sleep. They taking a dirt nap into eternity. I hope they made peace with Christ. Because they gonna die, they slap me. They
Okay.
caught you off guard. Wow, that was direct. They gonna die.
Oh boy. Welcome to the Sports Brothers. I'm Branson Wright.
Delbert Valentine.
Yeah, I tricked you that time. Usually I say it,
Yeah,
but
you
you
but I'm
know,
always ready.
of course you are.
Locked and
So
loaded.
we have a great show for you today. Our guest is going to be Jarrett Bell, columnist for USA Today. He's been covering the NFL since 1981, a long time. 81 is a good year, by the way.
Oh, that's you graduated from high school.
Yes, it is. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to like. And Devils, we have an announcement next week. So we want to make sure our listeners and our watchers make sure you check out our show next week because we have an announcement, a special announcement.
Okay.
And we're going to talk with Jarrett Bell about the NFL Combine. We're going to talk about the NFL Combine. We're going to talk about an article I did for Anscape that seems to be getting some attention. And next week, we're going to have homeboy from Cleveland, Clark Kellogg, on, and he's going to talk about the NCAA tournament. So,
Um,
Delvis, go ahead.
from the great class of
Oh
1979.
yeah, you have to add that. You have to add that. So Delvis, the combine just finished this past week. Ohio State represented when it come to the shorts Olympics. But what are some other things that you saw at the combine that made your eyes get big, or just had you taking some notes?
Really, it was a few people like Marigoa, who's projected to go maybe top five, top 10, maybe even be projected to go to the Browns. Didn't do a lot of the things. Caleb Downs from Ohio State, didn't do a lot of the things. And not a conspiracy theorist think that he will drop all the way to the Cowboys at 12. Man, please. It's just a bunch of Cowboy fans just want him to drop to 12. All you got to do is look at the tape. But that's my biggest thing is what people didn't do rather than what people did do. Of course, Sonny Styles turned it out. But the biggest thing about Sonny Styles, as far as his broad jump, far as his 40 time and all of that, my brother, it translates on the field. Conversely, Mr. Tyson, who's also may be a Brown, the wide receiver from Arizona State,
Yeah,
but
Jordan Tyson.
he did 26 reps of 225. The lineman didn't do that. He's a wide receiver.
Wow. And and one thing I know you're going to bring this up with Jared Bell, the fact that guys are picking and choosing and what events they're doing. What's your opinion about that? I mean, 26 reps for a wide receiver is outstanding, but the fact that he didn't run or do any other thing, what's your impression of something like that?
Well, with him, it's scary because he's still recovering from an injury, and he probably can't run as well as he wants to run. And a lot of the players who played a very long season, they feel that their body didn't recover, in enough time. But it's all about competition. I just think that you should want to compete. Sonny Styles made himself a lot of money because if you look at a lot of mocks, they had him in the middle of the first round. He's going to be top five. And if he's not going to get past the Browns at 6. Even though the Browns need an offensive tackle but they need a linebacker too because all of their linebackers except for Schlesinger are free agents. But it's an opportunity to make you some money. Monroe Freeling, the left tackle from Georgia, even though he has limited playing experience, is 300 something pounds. He ran a sub 540 and his footwork was impeccable. I would be scared of investing a top 5 pick in somebody who's only played a limited amount of games because we've seen people that have the physical tools, but once it goes to next level, they don't produce.
Now, did it change your mind at all? And now, of course, we must say that you are not an Ohio State fan,
Correct.
but was your mind changed on who's the best player in the draft and who should be picked at least number 2? Because the Raiders are going with the quarterback at 1.
To me, the best player, I think, is Caleb Downs. But if I were picking between Arvell Reese and Caleb Downs, not just because Arvell Reese is from Cleveland, I'm going to take Reese. And the reason why, well, Downs can play some slot. He can return. Of course, he's a safety, the best safety prospect probably since Ed Reed. But the thing about Arvell Reese is he can put his hand in the dirt. He could play off-ball linebacker. He could even play on-ball linebacker. So he could really play all 3 linebacker spots plus defensive end. So I think that the best player is Caleb Downs, but if I was picking for my team, I would take Arvell Reese.
Good. Was there any surprises in the combine? Especially, I mean, there were some people missing from there that last year, a couple years ago, Quantez Stiggers, he wasn't invited, and he ended up being a 5th round pick. Was there any other players there missing that you would have liked to have seen there?
I'd have liked to see the guy that you wrote an article about, Tyron Montgomery, because I've seen mocks him as high as the 3rd round. And you don't invite this guy, but you invite some 5th string receivers from a SEC school. I don't know what goes into compiling these lists, but to me, they don't seem like it's been done arbitrarily because this guy has the production. They don't have enough Division 2, Division 3 because we've seen people in the subdivisions that perform very, very well. I think that I would have loved to seen him compete because we saw him in the Senior Bowl. He turned it out. So why wouldn't you invite him to the combine? I think that the people that are putting together the combine have some work to do when it comes to inclusivity.
Absolutely, and that was a fun story doing that. And I always like to root for the underdog. The fact that this guy went to LSU as a basketball walk-on, and COVID hit. His mother came down was diagnosed with cancer, so he goes back home to Houston, and basically everybody's sitting around not doing anything. And his younger brother is a high school quarterback, so he needed somebody to go out for passes. So they work out, go out doing some drills and things of that nature. And then he comes up with the idea to play flag football. He puts his flag football exploits on Facebook, and a team out of Miami actually was playing in a tournament in Las Vegas, called him over to join the team. And the rest is history. He went on to Nicholas State, was there a couple years, and then went to John Carroll, Senior Bowl, the All-American Bowl, and now he's about to get drafted. And why they didn't invite him, I don't know. But hopefully during his pro day that if there's any questions from these teams that they get it answered during his pro day.
I mean, we've seen like your adopted nephew, McLaughlin, who ended up transferring to Youngstown State. He's still in the league as a running back for the Denver Broncos. So to me, it just needs to be a more inclusive list rather than just because you went to a SEC school or just because you went to a Big Ten school that means that you should be at the combine. I thought it's supposed to be for the best players. And he's not a small guy. If I'm not mistaken, he's like 6'1", a buck 90, something like that, and he's fast. So he's a bigger receiver that's fast, but you rather invite some dude who just because he was on the team, he should be invited to the combine. Got to do better. Got to do better.
Got to do better. Got to do better. Okay, we're gonna take a quick break and get to our headlines. When we come back, we're going to talk about who is the coach of the year in the NBA. And no surprise, I disagree with something Mike Krzyzewski said. Delvis, there's a few headlines this week when it comes to basketball, especially. When it comes to the NBA Coach of the Year, I think it's a two-man race. For me, it's Bickerstaff with Detroit or Mazzulla with the Celtics. And I don't see anybody else as contenders. What about you?
I don't see Mazzulla as a contender. I think it's Bickerstaff because it's hard to coach a team with expectations and you exceed those expectations. They've exceeded all expectations with still a young team. With Boston has a veteran team. Even though Tatum has been out, they still have a veteran team. Detroit doesn't have a veteran team. The veterans they got rid of. They had Dennis Schroeder, got rid of him. They had Tim Hardaway Jr., got rid of him. They have a young team. And JB is showing now, supposedly the Cavaliers, when he coached the Cavaliers, they were soft.
You said supposedly? You said supposedly?
Yeah, because you don't hear that talk about you don't hear that talk nowadays about the Detroit Pistons that he's coaching because JB is not he's not a timid dude, So I think it should be a runaway. It should be unanimous as far as I'm concerned.
Probably won't be unanimous because you always have those different opinions, especially reporters from with their own agendas. And I don't want to sound like you about people with media with their agendas. But I do think Mazzulla is a candidate. I for sure Bickerstaff should win Coach of the Year. But I think what Mazzulla went through with the high expectations, and even though they did have that injury, I didn't expect the Celtics to be as successful as they've been right now. So for me, it comes down to those two, but definitely Bickerstaff will get Coach of the Year.
We'll see.
Yes, we'll see. We'll see.
Bickerstaff better win.
So the NCAA, there's talk about expansion when it comes to the tournament from 68 to 76. And your boy, Mike Krzyzewski, Coach K, says there shouldn't be expansion. And I guess you agree with him.
100%. Yeah, 68 is too much. It should be 32.
Oh, wow. Old school.
Yeah, it should be 32. I mean, 64, okay, it's about revenue. So it wouldn't surprise me if they increase it. That means there's more television. That means there's more time to sell ads, which means for increased revenue. But, I mean, when you dilute it and have that many teams, anybody can win it, and I guess that's one of the attractive. That's what makes it attractive. But I just think it's just too many because if people are now not following the Final Four the way they used to, and a big reason is because the game isn't as exciting. Even though this draft is going to be so deep for players that are playing in college. I mean, the NBA draft, the 2026 NBA draft is going to be awesome. You're going to have probably at least 15 to 18 excellent players that are going to get drafted in the first round. So, I mean, the players are good. I just think the teams aren't good as they were.
I think the teams are good. I think you have, and what I mean by teams being good, some of the lower level teams, because they have the older players, a guy staying a lot longer. So it's more of a team. You have more upsets. You've had more upsets because of these older teams. I mean, they haven't had an expansion since 2011 when they went to 68. and they're talking about this being 2027, going to 76 teams. It's the best time of the year in sports. One of the best times in the years in sports for me, and the fact that you can have more teams in it to be Cinderella, to get a chance. I mean, look at it this way: Miami of Ohio is undefeated, and there's a chance that they may not go to the tournament. And a lot of it's based on their schedule, but it's still undefeated.
They had undefeated. A bad schedule. But then to have somebody like Bruce Pearl, that bigot, that he's a bigot, and then try to be suntan, and he's probably my color, but he's a bigot. And he's got the nerve to complain about something with his been cheating and been a loser his whole entire existence on this planet. Don't like Bruce Pearl, but he's the one that came out against Miami of Ohio. And it's like, dude, that's why you're not coaching anymore, because you're a bum. You're a bum. And then I think he bequeathed his coachship, if you will, to his son. And his son's a bum. His son, Auburn, bums. I'm sorry, Chuck.
Yeah, you're talking about Chuck's team, man.
but your boy Bruce Pearl is a bum.
Well, someone who's not a bum is our next guest, Jarrett Bell. He's from USA Today, been a long time NFL columnist, and we're going to have him in one moment. Welcome back to the Sports Brothers. We're here with NFL columnist, or I'm going to say longtime NFL columnist, Jarrett Bell, Hall of Famer, here with the Sports Brothers. JB, it never stops. Yeah, you're always working. What's your schedule been like?
It's been crazy, B, because you know how you go through the NFL season and they say it's week 8 and week 9. The calendar is lying, number one, because if you go back to training camp, the start of training camp to the Super Bowl, that's 30 weeks. So when they start talking about it's week 16, no, it's really about week 25. And so I feel it. And then you come back from the Super Bowl and the combine is 2 weeks later. It used to be a 3-week gap. So I'm a little ragged right now. But you know what, bro? I'm still fortunate, blessed. And if I wasn't doing it, I'd probably be ticked off. So I'm just going to try to deal with it, man. But it's that time of year, lion season, right?
Right.
So what season would this be for you this fall?
Oh, my goodness. Man, I don't know. I started in 1981. So you could just do the math. It's been over 40 years covering NFL. But for USA Today, I started in 93. So I guess I'm like 33 years or something like that. And I've covered 37 Super Bowls, 37 or 38. Every year the Super Bowl I had to stop and count again. So when you've been doing it like this, man, it's like that. But it's all good, man.
Yeah, that's good, man. I'm glad you're still out there swinging, still giving us that good coverage. And speaking of that, what was the word going into the combine, and what's the word coming out of it?
I think the word going in was that, Fernando Mendoza was, it as far as the undisputed number one guy. And then you had other things like, Ohio State's going to have 5 or 6 first round picks. So things like that were pretty well established going in. And I don't think there was anything that happened during the week of workouts and testing and everything that kind of changed that. And then the other thing that happens at the combine, it's not just so much about the draft. I mean, it's a lot about the draft, and the teams are doing the medicals and interviews and all that. But the other thing is that it's setting the table for free agency. And and so I think there's going to be, and let me just circle back for a second and connect this, because, I mentioned Mendoza, who's going to be the number one pick overall by the Raiders. And by the way, Branson and Delvis, he was really impressive in his podium time. But I mean, he's had a lot of practice too. But I was really just struck by his presence, and I thought for a minute, I was like, Lord, if you close your eyes, you think you're listening to Tom Brady. You know how polished Tom
Right.
Brady, was, behind the podium, behind the microphone. Well, this kid's got that too. And, just watching him play, as he became more and more of a story with Indiana as they rolled through, um, for his sake and the Raiders' sake too, you hope that he turns out to be everything that he's shown so far. So if they could support him, maybe they really have their franchise quarterback. But I point that out because the same week that Mendoza comes on the scene in Indianapolis, the Colts give the agent for Anthony Richardson permission to trade him. Now, and I texted Stephen Holder, who's with ESPN.com, and Stephen's been a Colts writer for the Star and Athletic. He's been, Indianapolis NFL guy. And I said, Stephen, wasn't it too long ago that you wrote this amazing story on Anthony Richardson behind the scenes at the Combine, which he did like 4 years ago, and now they're trading Anthony Richardson. And so I think that's the cautionary tale when you talk about having, the franchise quarterback that everybody thinks he is, and then what happens? We saw that in the NFL this season with, hey, Sam Darnold won the Super Bowl on his like fourth team, okay? And Baker Mayfield, who you guys know up in Cleveland, who they should have never gotten rid of, at least not when they did, has been reborn in Tampa. And Daniel Jones in Indianapolis, which hence is a reason why Anthony Richardson's gone. But I say that to say that you have these quarterbacks and you feel like, the world is at the palm of their hands, and then they turn out to be busts. Well, why does that happen? In Richardson's case, I think part of it was the team failed him, and the other part of it was that he failed the team. I think it was kind of, blame that could be cast both ways. And, he didn't have a lot of experience, on the college level when he came into the NFL. That's another thing that you have to factor in the expectations. But anyway, it didn't work, and they're moving on already. So I say all that to say, I think it's going to be an interesting quarterback market for veterans, because it's not that deep for college prospects. They say next year is supposed to be the thing, right? So we'll see. But we know that Kyler Murray is going to be out there. Tua Tagovailoa, he can be had. Anthony Richardson, would be interesting to see, who has interest in him, because you know how it goes. If a guy fails one place and you see that he's 6'6" and got a cannon arm, you say, hey, I can work with this guy, because certain things you just can't teach, right? So anyway, that's some of the talk that's come. Oh, Kirk Cousins, I forget about him. So the Falcons said, that, oh, by the way, we're going to go ahead and release Kirk Cousins. And Kirk Cousins, if you don't know it, is the guy who has gamed the NFL system more than anybody out there. And more power to him. I'm not hating on him for that. Kirk Cousins, Michigan State grad. I'm a Michigan State grad. So I've been following this kid or this guy pretty much since he came into the NFL and before. But the reason why I say he gamed the system is that when he was with Washington, he got franchise tagged. Then he got franchise tagged another time. Then he goes to the Vikings and get this fully guaranteed contract for like $250 million or whatever, when like nobody in the NFL gets guaranteed contracts. So his agent, Mike McCartney, did a great job of making that happen. And then he got another one, fully guaranteed. And then after that, he goes to the Falcons as a free agent, and most of it's guaranteed. And, he's out, in terms of out of a starting job by the by the end of his first year, and then another year last year, and now he's about to test the market again. So Kirk Cousins is, you know, um, Mr. Capitalism when it comes to
Right.
beating the NFL system. But you know, say about him and his abilities, and you know, he's kind of an average guy, right? But when you talk about the NFL system and how it's so slanted towards owners, and it just keeps growing, and their pie, as Jerry Jones likes to say, that you know, the pie keeps growing. You can't blame any player for, you know, taking advantage the way that Kirk Cousins has. So I want to see what what this next contract is going to be like. But you know, there's at least a half a dozen teams that, you know, if they don't pursue him, they're going to at least consider him, just because, you know, so many people always need quarterbacks. That's a long answer, isn't it?
No,
bro,
that's
but
good.
it's true.
We
It's
got
true.
time.
Yeah. Hey, Jared, a lot of people seem to be ignoring the combine. A lot of the players where we don't want to run. We'll lift, but we don't want to run. We won't throw, but we want to run. It's just like and Caleb Downs. I'll talk to you. Why do you think it's been this? Because before, if you were invited to the combine, you did everything. Now it seems like things are being cherry picked. Do you know why that is the case? So, I mean, it seems like they're waiting more for their pro days. So, has the combine lost its effectiveness?
You know, that's a great question, but I'm gonna disagree with you for a minute, slightly, Delvis, because I think that you've had players not work out for a long time. So I just mentioned Fernando Mendoza, right?
Right.
The last time the Raiders had the #1 pick overall, they took Jamarcus Russell. Tell me what year that was. Was it 2006 or so, you know, whatever year it was? That was the last time the Raiders had the #1 pick overall. And Jamarcus Russell did not throw at the combine. Okay, so however long ago that was just one case that just kind of pops off my head. So you've had guys that have not worked out yet. You've also had guys that said, okay, let me throw it down. Deion Sanders, for example, and now we're going back decades, right?
Right.
We're going back to the 80s, the late 80s. And Deion was like, oh, can I borrow your shoes? And he borrowed somebody's shoes and ran like a 4.2 or something, man.
Right.
You know, so that's one of those, you know, legendary combine stories. But you're right, Delvis, in terms of, you know, people cherry picking what they're going to do and what they're not going to do. So it's not surprising anymore when the top quarterbacks don't throw. It's not surprising when some of the top players don't go in there, and that's what they do, as you alluded to. You know, I'll do it at my pro day, or they'll do, like you said, Delvis, they'll cherry pick and say, okay, I'll do the lifting but not the running. I'll do the drills but not the 40. So, you know, it is kind of frustrating. I mean, these scouts are going to get what they're going to. I mean, they're going to have these guys rated. It's very difficult for some guys to really, you know, help themselves a whole lot if they are already a top prospect. And I think that's kind of the thinking for a lot of these guys. But by the same token, if you're Sonny Styles and you come out and, you know, that's a guy who had high stock, you know, he's projected as a top 5 pick. And then he goes out to the combine, the underwear Olympics.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And he just busts ass, right?
Right.
I mean, he just put it on, man. And, you know, so you look at a guy like that who you could say he has stuff to lose. And let's not even talk about the possibility of an injury. But, you know, in terms of your stock, you know, can you fall from the projected 5th pick to the 12th pick or stuff like that? And Sonny Styles went out there and took no prisoners, right? And just was an amazing, you know, had an amazing demonstration of his athleticism. And then his older brother goes out there and runs like a 4.29 the next day. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. But yeah, Sonny Styles, I think a lot of people, when they look at this combine, they say, you know, he was like maybe the star or the one who helped himself the most. And there's several people. And I tell you, another guy I was impressed with was the tight end from Oregon,
Sadiq.
Kenyon Sadiq. He ran, in the mid 4.4s for a tight end. And so, yeah, we'll be hearing his name go off the board early. And then you had three offensive tackles, each weighing 310, 315, 320, and all three of them ran under 5 flat in the 40. So this was what they said was the fastest combine. Remember they said Indianapolis had this slow track, right? That was the reputation for Indianapolis for so many years. And that was supposedly one of the reasons, was one of the convenient excuses for guys not wanting to work out. They said, oh, the track in Indy is slow. Well, that was no slow track this time.
Not at all.
And yeah, 7 out of the 8 position groups averaged the fastest times ever at the combine. So that's just kind of putting the metrics, the numbers on it. It was a fast track. But like I said, those 300-pound, tackles going like that caught my eye, man.
Oh yeah, it was great. Now, Jed, I wanted to ask you another question. The age of the players now that are going to the combine, before, it just seems like just a few years ago, when they were 22, they were considered an older prospect. Now you see some that's coming in 24, 25, them played with 3 or 4 teams because of the so-called COVID season, plus some red shirts. Why do you think that they've changed it? Because it's still 22 is still 22, 21 is still 21. But instead of, it seems like teams going for the younger prospects, they're going for the older prospects. Why do you think that changed?
Yeah. I think number one, you just touched on a couple reasons, and there are more older players in the draft than they were. Now, part of this, like you mentioned COVID, so part of this is going to go away at least in another couple years, right? Because those guys will be long gone. But I think the more essential factor is the NIL.
NIL money, yep.
Yeah, and so there are guys who are making so much money. Like, hey, your guy in Cleveland, Shedeur Sanders, took a pay cut
Right.
to go to the NFL, right? And more power to him, because we've been saying it for throughout all of our careers, how college players were getting taken advantage of. So from that level, you don't blame them for being able to get money, because there's a lot of them that are not going to make it in the NFL and have a second contract in the NFL. And so if you can make it in college, you give yourself a great start. And oh, by the way, if your school is making a gazillion dollars off of you, you deserve it. So let's say that. But the impact on the NFL draft from that is what you're seeing with older players. Because if you're an older player where 5 years ago or 6, or before COVID, you thought, hey, let me come out early while I'm hot, I'm a junior in college, more often than not, guys did it, right? And you'd have like 2/3 of the first round would be underclassmen, right?
Correct.
And now it's kind of like, well, if I stay this senior year and I'm going to make this $10 million on the NIL or whatever it is they're getting, it's in the millions, especially for, the type of player, then there's no financial incentive to go to the NFL. So for the NFL standpoint, it's actually probably pretty good from the standpoint that they get more seasoned players. Now, whether or not that those players have another year of wear and tear on their body and they don't get them as long, I mean, somebody's going to have to do a study. I don't know. I mean, we're just all talking, anecdotally right now, but those are the types of things that, are associated with this. But to your point, Delvis, older players, and back in my day, or back in the day, I should say, remember Roger Staubach,
Yeah.
Oh
Hall of
yeah.
Fame quarterback. You know, he came into the NFL at, I don't know, 27 years old or something
Yeah.
crazy like that, right? He had, but his reason was not NIL. His reason was the
Military.
Vietnam War
Right.
Right.
and military service. But yeah, man, I think it's going to be something to really kind of, keep tabs on as we analyze these draft classes in the years ahead.
Hey, JB, sticking with the combine, and I'm about the underdog. I did that story on Stiggers a few years ago. I have a current one on Montgomery from John Carroll, and neither one was at the combine. So who at the combine that wasn't really looked at before that may have helped themselves or caused notice from what they did?
Ooh, I have no clue. So let me just say that. But there's some, because you got 300 and something guys there, and I get your point, because there's always guys that are not there or barely got there, and all they need is an opportunity. And then I think one of the things, somebody pointed it out to me the other day, so many of these guys that get invited, especially when you get to the lower tier, if you will, if you get to the bottom 10th of how these guys are rated, the guy who got in may have went to, a Big Ten school, and he got picked, as opposed to somebody who came out of an HBCU who didn't get picked. And I think that's the inequity that probably really still needs to be addressed, because when you start talking about the talent level from one to the other, the guy from the smaller school or the HBCU has just as much as one of these other guys. And I'm not just saying the lower tier big conference schools either, but I think that's the thing that, kind of institutionalizes the barriers for certain players. So that's why, I hear a lot of scouts and personnel people tell me that they feel like they really have to do their homework when it comes to, you know, mid majors and HBCUs and, all of these schools that are not in the Power Five conferences. But I don't have a good answer for you in terms of that. But I will say this, and I wrote a column about it that's up right now. I think, in my mind, for my I am nobody's draft nerd, right? Okay, I'm just learning these players now, just like everybody else, because I've been concentrating on the NFL for the last 30 weeks, right?
Who's counting?
Yeah, exactly. But I will say this: here's a guy who got on my radar, KC Concepcion, and he's the wide receiver from Texas A&M who so courageously, got up and did his press deal on Friday, stuttering and stammering away because he has a speech impediment. And so I say it, as I frame it that way. He was courageous to get up there, because he could have asked the NFL not to put him on the podium, but to put him off on the side, where they also have some tables too. So you got 8 podiums in that press conference room, and then you've got some side tables that have smaller crowds. But he got up on the podium and he talked, and he struggled through some things, but he got his messages across. But there was some goofballs on social media who were mocking him, making fun of him, just total disrespect. And, the great thing about it in the end, and this is what I wrote about, he responded with pure class, character, heart. Um, they go low, he goes high. Michelle Obama,
Right.
Michelle Obama, approach. But he did that, and he put a post on Instagram, saying that he was there for all the people who have, speech impediments, who may be afraid to speak up, and so on and so forth. So he turned a negative into a positive, and, really for the greater good. And yeah, for himself, but not so much for himself because, you know, he's in the fray. But when he, you know, spoke the way he did about it and said that, you know, this whole episode showed, you know, how tacky people are, and that's my word, but that's what it said. What he said essentially, he kind of just cast himself as a role model. Now, here's the other thing. Now he's projected as a first round pick. So he's got talent. He's a all-purpose guy. He returned punts and a receiver, explosive, dynamic, you know, all that kind of stuff, right? But now people are going to know him for not just that wild hair, but they're gonna know him for being the guy who, you know, took some attacks during the combine. And so I just think that from a human interest perspective, you know, he rose up on my draft board, you know, for whatever that's worth, just because of the heart that he showed. And then when I was looking at some of the comments on social media after he put his post out, people saying, yeah, my son has dealt with, you know, a speech impediment, and I had to go through his, you know, so many people could relate to him, you know, regardless of what their situation is. And I just think that that's a great message that he sent out there. And Reggie Wayne, he put a post on Instagram, on Twitter, and he said that he thought that the kid was one of the most confident guys that he ran across at the combine. But just like everybody else, it's kind of like, okay, I'm pulling for this guy. So, you know, that's a guy who, you know, I think helped himself in a lot of ways and helped some other people too.
Well, we're definitely going to be rooting for him. And JB, we know you got to go soon. I just have one more question, and then Delvis has one. So leaving the combine, let's talk about the money, you know, free agency. Which teams do you think are going to be big players when it comes to free agency?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question, because I was on the bus with Jerry Jones the other night.
There we go.
Yeah, and Jerry would swear to answer that question in the affirmative for the Dallas Cowboys, right? So he promised. He said he's going to, what did he say? He said he was going to borrow against the future or whatever. But here's the thing with the Cowboys, and I'm not saying they're not going to be a player, but they are in the red under the salary cap more than any team in the NFL. So when I checked on Friday, Saturday, the Cowboys were like $58 million under the cap. Now, he said there was a couple things they could do, like they've got 3D tackles, including Kenny Clark and Quentin Williams, and they're going to restructure their contracts, give them more money, and save some money that way. Maybe they'll get a deal with George Pickens. He's franchise tag. They could, you know, strike a long-term deal. But you know, the Cowboys, when it comes to long-term deals, big money deals for star players, it usually takes them a while. I mean, usually they're talking about this stuff in August, and then mid-August, and then late August, and then September. And I'm not just talking about Micah Parsons last year, even though that was the most dramatic because of the way it turned personal. But even with Dak Prescott, CD Lamb, before that, DeMarcus Lawrence. I mean, the Cowboys just always seem to have these deals, and they end up paying them, and they end up paying them big and setting the market. Well, why couldn't you just do that in like May and then save yourself all the headaches? But Jerry loves the drama. So we'll put the Cowboys in one category, but I'm just looking when you ask the question, because I remember last year the Patriots had like 90 million in cap room. They don't have that much this time. Where they at? I got the list from, and this is from a few days ago anyway. Yeah, the Patriots had like 37 million in cap space. But the teams that have the most cap space, and I think that's where you start, because you look at who has the money that they could spend. Tennessee Titans have $99 million in cap room. The Las Vegas Raiders have $88 million The Chargers have 82 million. And the Chargers are interesting because the Titans and the Raiders, they're in total rebuilds, right?
Right.
Okay. Right. And that's not to say they can't do it and turn around quick, but, you know, like the Patriots did last year. But the Chargers, you look at and you say, okay, that's a team that's been in the playoffs the last couple of years. And if they add a key piece here or there, you know, that might put them over the top. Plus, they got a new coordinator, 2 new coordinators, including Mike McDaniel running Jim Harbaugh's offense. So I think that's one to really, really keep an eye on. But the other thing, too, you've got a $301 million salary cap. So that's the largest ever, and it's going to just keep going up. And right. But the funny thing about it is not like the players are getting a whole lot better, right? The money's going up. The CBA is, you know, what it is that teams have to spend at a floor in that salary cap. So you got that. But yeah, those are some of the teams I would look at as I kind of glance at, you know, who's got room. Pittsburgh's going to be interesting too.
Well, Jarrett, I know you have to go, man. We appreciate it, but I want to commend you because during the Super Bowl press conference with the commissioner, you were one of the black folks that talked about this egregious practice of not hiring black head coaches. 10 openings, no brothers were hired, and now they're trying to say Saleh is a minority. They need to stop that. So, brother, I want to commend you for that. And I know we got to go. So just real quick, what do you have to say about that as far as 10 openings, no brothers, and will there ever be hope that brothers that are qualified will get hired as head coaches?
Yeah, I mean, that's a mouthful, and it's real relevant. And we've been talking about it for a while, and it's worked through cycles. So this was one of the worst cycles, if not the worst, because you had so many openings, right? And you know, I think the answer could, boy, it's like okay, so it's like they moved the goalposts, right? So if you want somebody who is successful from a winning team, you think that person is positioned to be able to step into a head coaching role. Well, who better personified that this year than Vance Joseph, the defensive coordinator for the Denver Broncos, right? Who had the best record in the AFC, #1 seed. He got a couple interviews during that first weekend, wasn't even face to face, right? So that's a tragedy. Brian Flores for Minnesota. Now you could, you know, like I said, usually the formula is a coach from a winning team. Now the Vikings were not that winning team, but they had a, you know, lights out defense, much like the Cleveland Browns did. But Brian Flores doesn't get a sniff, and he got a sniff. He got some interviews, but you know, didn't get a job. Okay, but he's got this lawsuit going against the NFL, right. And I find it hard to believe that, you know, people are really, really going to hire him. And in fact, I take the cynical view and say, you know, he got interviews because he's got the lawsuit. So when the NFL gets to court, they can say, well, we did interview him. And, you know, he had 3 interviews in 2026 and 2 in 2020, you know, just as a response. So that's an interesting one. But the other thing that's happening now is that these guys are getting opportunities. And I'm talking about young, white offensive coordinators and quarterback coaches who don't have the resumes. Now they may be, you know, and people are looking for the next Sean McVay, right? And Sean McVay, now he's 10 years with the Rams, and I don't think anybody can argue and say he, you know, isn't one of the NFL's best coaches and all of that. Right. But Sean McVay was Sean McVay. So just because, you know, Jim Cooper over here, you know, looks like Sean McVay, don't mean he is Sean McVay, right? We found that out with Kirk Kingsbury. Just because he's Sean McVay's friend doesn't mean he's Sean McVay, right? And so that's one of the problems that really has to happen. But I think, you know, this whole anti-DEI landscape in the NFL, which is, well, in the nation, has trickled down to the NFL, and, you know, where they are almost afraid to even say that we are supportive of DEI efforts. So the NFL is kind of backtracking on, the progressiveness it has displayed just in terms of how it wanted to have, programs. Obviously you got the Rooney Rule. It's still, and teams comply with it, but they don't, or they do half-heartedly or whatever, but it's not producing results. And so I go back to, like I said, some of these guys who are getting opportunities that don't have deep resumes, right? Some of these young white coaches. I think one of the other travesties, too, as I think about this, is that T. Martin, right, who was a quarterbacks coach with the Baltimore Ravens, coached a two-time MVP and can't even get a job as a coordinator, right? Yet Todd Monken was the coach of that MVP, and they brutally underperformed, got a job. John Harbaugh was the coach of the MVP and that team, and that, that underperformed, blew one lead after another, and then he's the hottest coach on the market. So, those inequities just keep happening. And, all I could do is point them out, because it's like the patterns just keep repeating themselves. So, this thing has worked through cycles, because I've been covering this league long enough that I remember when there were like, 3 assistant coaches in the league, or it seemed like it's been, maybe it was a few more than that, but what I'm saying, there might have been, one coordinator. Some teams only had one black coach. A lot of teams did back in the 80s. And Bill Walsh kind of changed that component with the 49ers in the 80s. 49ers, oh, by the way, the team of the 80s. And Bill Walsh had a staff that had like Sherm Lewis and Ray Rhodes and Denny Green and Dwayne Board, later Dwayne Board, Tommy Hart. Bill Walsh had like half his staff was like brothers, right? Now you got 20 people on the staff. Back in Bill Walsh's day, there might have been 8 assistant coaches or 10 at the most. Now you got 20, and you still don't have, but a couple brothers in a lot of cases. You got more than you used to, no doubt. But they're not getting the opportunities for advancement. So T. Martin is, like I said, another case to put out there as a guy who the system has definitely not worked, like it should for him, while others come and get those opportunities. And most of the others that get those opportunities, some are going to be, successful or good, but a lot of them are not. And then we'll be sitting right here looking at the Cleveland Browns hiring a new coach in another 2-3 years.
Hey, JB, thanks for coming on. I had a whole lot of questions, but we have to get you back on maybe right before the draft.
Okay, my man. I appreciate you guys. Appreciate you guys having me, man. I'll catch up with you.
Appreciate you. All right, JB.
Good deal. All right, appreciate you, man.
Wonderful, wonderful, exceptional interview with Jarrett Bell, who's been, over about 45 years of covering this doggone game. And, bro, he gives insight like few can, if any.
Yeah, I had a whole lot of questions to ask him. And next time we get him on, I want to talk to him about adding a game. NFL always talking about adding a game. And, what does that mean for the players? Does that mean more money? And who's really the boss when it comes to NFL? Is it the commissioner? Is it the owners? So there's a lot of things I want to ask Jarrett the next time we get him. And if you have some questions for Jarrett Bell, put that into the comment section. And again, don't forget to subscribe and don't forget to follow.
Bro, I got to say something that's piggybacking on what Jarrett talked about when we had discussed about the lack of black coaches getting an opportunity. I'm going to read a quote for you. Direct quote.
Okay.
I didn't coach Lamar well enough. I didn't have as good of a relationship as I could have had. I didn't do the things we needed to do this year to win enough games to give ourselves a chance. I believe that. That is Todd Monken, direct quote. And he gets rewarded with being a head coach of the Cleveland Browns with another young black coach. Now, how did
black quarterback.
I mean black
Mhm.
quarterback. Now, how did this dude get a head coaching job when this isn't what somebody wrote. This is a direct quote from him telling you he didn't do enough things with the two-time MVP Lamar Jackson, yet you reward him with a head coaching job. I'm not saying Jim Schwartz would have been a good head coach. I think he would have been horrible too. But Todd Monken, this is what you do, Cleveland Browns. That's why Jimmy Haslam, I'm telling you, he's the wrong way Feldman. He's the slap rock. Any other thing that you could think of, man. He's a horrible, horrible team owner. And this needs to be called out because none of these local yokels in the local media in Cleveland ever even talked about that. What do you think about that? When this guy admits communications is his shortcoming, but he now gets to be a head coach.
Oh, I'm stunned. I'm stunned. I never heard that quote before, and for someone to admit their shortcomings at their previous position, previous job, and here you got a job where communication, even in Baltimore and here in Cleveland, communication is the key. So I wonder, what is the expectations from the Browns? Is this just a short-term thing? Is this somebody they believe is going to turn things around and go to the playoffs, or is it just to maintain what's been going on? So that remains to be seen, and I think we'll get a glimpse of that depending on what they do in free agency and where they draft in the upcoming draft.
Well, Branson, real quick, we know that the Cavaliers have been missing Donovan Mitchell, man. Do you think now with groin, we both had groin injuries and we know they're very, very, very tricky. Do you think by the time the playoffs roll around, man, that he's going to be okay?
He better. He better be okay. And as you know, Delvis, when it comes down to the playoffs, I don't care if your thumb is broken, your toenail is pulled off, you got some pulled muscles. You have to be ready. You have to be ready to play because nobody's 100% in the postseason. So you just have to put those injuries and hurts behind you and just be ready to perform because nobody's going to want any excuses when it comes to the postseason for the Cavs this year.
But when it's your groin, you'll be singing falsetto.
But I can say one thing I'm looking forward to this week after this game, after this game with the Cavs and Pistons. I'm looking forward to Sunday's game against the Celtics at home, and this is going to show us a lot. So Cavs will be playing back-to-back playoff teams that they could face in the semis and in the final round of the Eastern Conference playoffs. So it's going to tell me a lot, and I'm looking forward to it to see which Cavaliers team stands up.
Well, I'm going to be watching more news than sports this weekend as a veteran. I hate that this dumb Trump has gotten us into a conflict, which isn't even our war. This is a war that Israel wanted. And now he has us, and I pray for our veterans. I pray for our people who are over there. You have so many people. You have basketball players over there that female players that are having trouble getting out of that area. So I'll be watching and then see the communist Stephen A. Smith talk about how good of a job Trump's doing. And so that's what I'm going to be doing, bro, watching more news than sports because this is just a bad situation, bro, a bad situation. You toppled over an 86-year-old leader and this Khomeini, whatever his name is. And supposedly this guy, this president or this poser said that he eliminated the Iran nuclear stuff, and now all of a sudden we got to eliminate it. So you lied the first time, man. You got to be better. Got to be better, people. We got to demand better of our politicians, like how we do for our sports athletes. We demand better for them. Demand better of your representatives and your politicians.
Well, certainly our prayers are with our soldiers and with the world, and right. So definitely our prayers are out. So, and if you want to get away from a lot of the issues of the world, watch the Sports Brothers and maybe take your mind off of it a little bit. So Delvis, another good show. And, I always enjoy doing this with you, my brothers. And of course, Jarrett Bell with his wisdom in terms of the NFL. We appreciate that. So again, until next week, you've been watching the Sports Brothers. Oh, go ahead.
Don't forget to subscribe and like the video and tell a phone and tell a friend.
And also remember, next week, check out our show, especially because of the special announcement we have. So again, thank you for watching the Sports Brothers, and
welcome to the family.
Looking for the perfect way to unwind after work? Slide through to Charterhouse Grill for happy hour, Tuesday through Fridays, 4 to 7 p.m. Enjoy $4 off signature cocktails, top shelf liquor, appetizers, and all wine, plus $2 off all beer. Great drinks, great food, grown folk vibes. That's happy hour at Charterhouse Grill, 991 East 185th Street, Cleveland. Pull up, unwind, we'll take care of the rest.